Hi, welcome back to Our Town. My name is Chip Harrington, and once again, I'll be your host this week of our local broadcast that we try to feature some local people and issues that we have here in Ludlow on a regular basis. Today we have two people who don't personally reside in Ludlow, but their presence is felt on a weekly basis, or a daily basis, I should say, and that's Bax and OBrien from Rock 102. They're two local DJs from Rock 102. Many of you out there certainly will recognize the names and see the billboards around Springfield and around the greater Springfield area. And I want to thank both of you guys for accepting my invitation to come here today and be interviewed by me. Usually, kind of the shoes on the other foot, you're usually the ones doing the interviews, so.
Thanks for inviting us, Chip. It's unfortunate to see that you've worked yourself to the bottom of the list of invitees.
I know.
That you've actually had to invite us now.
Who canceled this week?
Yeah, right. Somebody bag out on you?
No, not at all. Actually, you guys are probably the most famous people we've ever had on this show. So it's,
you really are scraping the bottom of the pond of success, aren't you?
That's right. Well, I'm sure it's the
I
pinnacle.
almost feel like walking out now. Is that an insult?
I'm sure it's the pinnacle of your career as well.
It is.
Being here in Ludlow, but no, really, thank you very much.
It is, because last week we were just on the cable access show in Otis.
Yeah.
So this is
Otis has television.
they just figured out how to put the plug in the wall.
Runs on a generator.
That's great. Well, I want to talk to John. I want to actually start with you a little bit about the because you have been native to this area for many years, at least in the Enfield area, growing up. But kind of give our viewers here kind of a sense of who you are and where you're from.
Well, as far as I can remember, I'm from Enfield. Grew up in Enfield. Went to Enfield High School. Graduated in the class of '78. That was with 12 consecutive years of schooling. Never stayed back. Did a grueling 8-week stint at Stick, where I was a criminal justice major, falling just short of passing the bar. Although in the 8 weeks I didn't pass too many.
You were on the track team, the bar, the track team?
Yeah, right. They kept raising the bar every time I competed. And started working at the college radio station. My first choice was to be a police officer. That didn't pan out, what with my extensive record and all. So I decided on radio instead, started working at the college station at Stick, and fell in love with it. Left school to go to broadcasting school. Came out of broadcasting school and got a job right away down in Hartford. And I've worked in the Hartford-Springfield market now. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was doing the math the other day. It's been 20 years now.
20 years you've been in the Springfield area?
Back and forth between Springfield and Hartford. Yeah, not consecutively, not the whole time, but I've been in radio in this area now for 20 years.
So right around 1980 is when you got your start, I guess?
Yeah. Actually, it might have been like 79.
Yeah.
Almost 21 now.
What kind of station did you start out when you were down in
I was at WTIC down in Hartford, the AM station, produced an overnight talk show, and then I came up to Springfield and worked at a couple of the other stations here in the market, and bounced back and forth to Hartford a couple of times, and then settled in at Rock 102 sometime in the mid-'80s as a part-timer, doing weekend shifts and overnights and afternoon fill-ins and stuff like that, and then graduated to the morning show in 1987.
Now, back then, did you always think, this is going to be a career for me? I want to try to get a morning show and be the, I'm not going to mention the other people out there that have morning shows, but, you know, be that person of Springfield?
To tell you the truth, I really hadn't. I mean, the idea was to get into radio, and quite honestly, back then, I wasn't thinking all that much about, well, the money is in mornings, so that's where I should be. Actually, on the opposite side of that coin, I was looking at the standpoint of, I'm not a morning person. I can't handle getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's no way I can see myself doing that. And as it turned out, I was doing overnights, which was more conducive to my lifestyle. I'd always enjoyed third shift, and I would get off of my air shift at 6 and start hanging out with the morning guy who was working alone back in the 80s, and I'd stay an hour and a half, and for a few weeks into a couple of months it happened, and then all of a sudden somebody approached me and asked me if I was interested in joining as a sidekick, and I said sure. So they took advantage of that and hired me for $2 an hour and put me on the morning show, and when that worked, they figured they had something going here. Yeah. And that's the way it began, and since then it has progressed and obviously gotten better.
Now, you have certainly been through your share of sidekicks.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. You're, I think Bax is number 4?
5.
5?
Number 5.
Wow.
4 or 5, what's the difference?
You're like the Elizabeth Taylor of the radio industry.
Basically, although I haven't had anyone twice yet, like Liz did.
Now, my earliest memory is, I remember Rodeo and O'Brien.
That was partner number 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So who was
when I first started out, it was Brian and O'Brien. Brian Hale was the morning guy and program director when I was doing the overnights, and he and I got together And then there was a management shake-up and Brian was let go. And they actually brought back a former afternoon guy from Somers, Connecticut named Scott Legier. Mike Scott was his name on the air. And he came back from Florida to do afternoons, and then he had a personal situation that necessitated him going back to Florida, so he left on his own. And then Jim Rodeo was brought in, and Rodeo and I worked together for, I think it was close to 2 years. And then I was fired, and they brought in Scott Cohen from News 40, who had already been doing sports with Rodeo and I. In fact, Cohen had been doing sports through Brian and O'Brien, Scott and O'Brien, and Rodeo and O'Brien. And then when I left, they partnered Scott with Rodeo, and then that didn't work. Took them about 6 months to figure that out, and they let the both of them go. And then they brought in another guy who was there for a while, and then Jonathan and Deborah, and then Deborah was let go, and I was brought back to work with Jonathan.
Wow.
So I was out for 2 years and then brought back in '89.
Wow. Quite a history, there's no question about that.
It's very seesaw-like.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, you seem to be pretty stable now with Bax.
This is our most professional and successful partnership that the station has had, and I got to tell you, in my personal opinion, and this isn't ego speaking, in even the years before I started doing mornings there, I mean, Rock 102 was never a strong morning show station.
Right.
Back in the 70s and the early 80s. Having grown up in this area, I can say that. And I think what they've got going now between Bax and I is definitely the best combination that they've had so far. And now with the addition of Nikki Reed, it's even that much stronger.
Right. I mean, you're getting asked to be interviewed by local cable access channels, so things are...
Yeah, it is successful, and I think we're doing great.
Made it.
Things are most definitely looking up. Now, Bax, let me ask you, because you're not native to this area anyways. You are to Massachusetts, from what I understand, listening to you.
I grew up south of Boston near the Providence area, and then went to college at Marquette University in Milwaukee, and I stayed there for 11 years. I worked, in fact, just to show you what a small business this is, my first radio station, when I was first hired, the morning show guy, was Jim Rodeo.
Oh, yeah?
And the program director, several years later, as I worked at my first radio station, was the program director who, at Rock 102, he left to go work at a radio station that is a sister station, the station that I left. When I got here, Jonathan Reynolds went back to Milwaukee. He was fired in Milwaukee, worked at the radio station in Springfield, Illinois, that I came from before I came here. So it's very, very incestuous and very, very small.
Yeah,
And that was before all the big mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was before things got very crazy. And many years ago, there was an opportunity out of college for me to come to Rock 102, and I stayed in Milwaukee because opportunities presented themselves there. So I could have come to Springfield many years before I actually did.
Now, when you were working out in Milwaukee, was it your intention to always try to get back to this part of the, or were you just kind of going, whoever will pay you?
I really enjoyed living in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife was from there. Her whole family was there. I made a lot of friends and was doing very, very well. And I was transferred from the station I was working in Milwaukee to Illinois for a short time, and then Illinois didn't work out, and I was transferred here. So I've been working for this company for a number of years. It just, no, Springfield was not, you know, where I wanted to get back to, nor was Massachusetts, because in radio, to go and say, well, I want to work in Houston is a big mistake. You may never actually get to Houston. So I never had the intention of coming back. I never thought it would be possible. It worked out, and here I am.
I don't think anybody has ever publicly been heard saying, I want to be in Springfield, Massachusetts.
No.
I don't think that's ever happened.
When they tell you it's the comeback city of America, it's the city that you come back to when you're trying to get out.
When you haven't made it in other places.
I see, Well, we'll definitely be talking about Mayor Albano.
We'll be here when you come back.
Because I've heard some pretty interesting interviews that you guys have had with Mayor Albano about that subject. But where did you go to high school, and how did you get into the whole business?
Well, I went to high school at Dighton Rehoboth High School in Rehoboth, Mass. And I mean, I went to college thinking that I would probably do what my parents did, and that was, you know, they're both therapists.
Oh, yeah?
So I went and I thought, well, I really don't want to be a therapist. I want to do something that's kind of fun. And I got involved in the campus radio station, and, you know, eventually, you know, became the program director there, and then started working for a legitimate radio station at the same time. So I was working like 2 stations simultaneously. And then by the time I graduated, I was told 3 months before graduation that I would have a full-time job waiting for me, doing overnights. So it was very, very quick, and I just stayed.
In this business, is it something that you would kind of have a knack for? Do you find people that come into it, you can look at them and say, you know, this person is kind of got the natural ability to kind of be on air on a regular basis?
Some people, yes. But, you know, they almost have to start doing it to really know for sure. I mean, there are a lot of people who you think, well, they got a lot of personalities, they'll do fine. But you shove a microphone in their face and they just freeze up. And there are some people who, you know, are shy and quiet, and you put a microphone in their face and they're right on.
Yeah.
One of the many jobs I had outside of actually being on the air was as the assistant director at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. And my experience, both as a student and as somebody working the curriculum there, was that people can teach you, people can learn the fundamentals of radio. There is the gift of gab, obviously, that certain people have and others do not. There are, however, plenty of other positions in radio and television, obviously, that do not include standing in front of microphones and cameras. But for the most part, I think, particularly morning show personalities, I think most of us grow up with a certain gift of being able to speak properly, even though I'm not doing well now.
Yeah.
I think there's
all right, John, it's just cable accent.
Yeah, I think there's a natural talent in a lot of people that end up doing morning radio.
But there's also, I mean, that is very true, but there's also there's a whole craft about it that to describe it is very difficult. I mean, you either learn it and kind of hone that skill, or you don't. And there's some people who just never progress beyond a certain point, and there's some people that do very quickly.
Well, now you two have kind of ascended to the point where I'm sure when you're on the overnights, both of you are on the overnights, it's kind of, you get on, you talk for a minute, 2 minutes, and then you play music for a while and do your thing. But now, you know, unless you do your 9 o'clock timeline at 9 or whatever that is called, that's really probably the only music that we hear other than it's you guys talking to each other and Nikki Reed or Mayor Albano, whoever else it might be that you're interviewing. So, I mean, you've ascended to the point where you are like the morning personalities. You know, you're not really a DJ anymore. You're the personality.
Well, you've either done very good research or you're an actual listener of the show. By the way, you brought that up. Yeah, the morning guys are oftentimes not there to play music. I mean, anybody can play music, and that's not to put down the people who work the other shifts. But obviously, the morning show is more of a revenue-gaining vehicle for the radio station. They're there more for entertainment and information than they are for music. Music takes almost a back seat in the mornings. So, I mean, that's where you turn to find out all the things that are going on.
Also, if you were to put John and I in a regular radio air shift where we're doing nothing but playing music, you would find that we would probably be the two worst jocks in the world. Yeah. Because it's just not what we're good at. Our skills are in something completely different. That you know, we are morning guys.
Yeah.
That's why oftentimes it can be very frustrating. You answer the phones constantly, and people will request songs, and when they don't hear it, or they'll call up and they'll yell, "Play some music." Yeah. Well, you know, the truth of the matter is that's not what morning radio is about anymore. Certainly there are stations out there that are music intensive during the mornings, but the stations that are not for a reason, and they've chosen to not be music intensive. So it's obviously the average listener probably doesn't have as much of a concept of what goes on behind the scenes than the rest of us do, or even yourself, as you were mentioning, even just setting up the question. There is a lot more to it than just playing music.
Now, when Jonathan left to go do his thing, how did, I mean, you two came together. Was it your, did you have any say in this, or was it kind of like, here, O'Brien, here's Bax, and you were going to be working together?
My say, I mean, it was the same instance every time I lost a partner, and being that Bax was my fifth. My say was always, first of all, in some circumstances I wasn't told that there was going to be a change. When Brian was let go, nobody gave me an advance notice. They just came to me right after they fired him and said, "You need a new partner, but we have a guy in mind. What do you think?" I said, "Let's try him out." At the same time, they also opened the position to other people